challenge is that this experiment that's America right now has gotten so big, and at the same time that the system has become so large, we've become so individual. It's become, we live such individual, cloistered lives, and so I think that we don't give a lot of thought to how we purchase, how we invest, what we do with our money, how that really affects our community, our neighbors, our friends. We tend to think about how it affects our bottom line, oftentimes, instead of really considering how it's affecting the world, how it's affecting the community. And I think for us, changing the way that we have spent our money, what we spend it on, where we spend it, would probably be the one little way that we could try to critique the system.
Well, largely we've tried to make fresh produce available for a reasonable price, which is hard to find. You know, our tomatoes, maybe we'll sell at $1.50 a pound, whereas organic local tomatoes will sell at sometimes $6 a pound. So in that sense, and we accept food stamps, so in that sense we've tried to create a way that people can still purchase the produce. It is not all free, it's not all given, that you can buy this, and this is for people in the suburbs, going to a farmer's market is an activity. It's a fun thing to do, a great thing to support. But people down here, you know, that's not even something that they think about, or a concept that they think about. So we've been able to at least make our produce affordable and accessible to people. We have from time to time employed neighbors that are otherwise unemployable, trained mechanics to work on our trucks that can't hold steady jobs, or ex-offenders that can't hold steady jobs to maintain our garden sites and mow lawns and that sort of thing. So we've tried to create an alternative, I guess, business model in that sense. Obviously nothing official, or it's just when we have extra funds, that's what we want to do with it. And largely, really we've been teaching people. We've been trying to teach people. So not only are we going to grow food and have gardens, but if you have space in your backyard and you want a garden and you want to learn to do this yourself, then here we are, and we'll help you do that. Which I feel like is, I guess, in the end, a more sustainable way.
Bare bones sort of breakdown of the shop is, if you have a bike, you can bring it in and then use our stands and our tools and the help of a volunteer mechanic, all for free. So there's, you know, an educational aspect to it. You're doing the work yourself, but you're being coached by a mechanic. There's a communal aspect to it, because again, you're working with someone else on this process. And then at the same time, your bike is getting fixed. So there's that very practical sort of take-home component of it as well. And then you can decide to volunteer if you want to. If you volunteer, you earn shop credit. We try to keep it at, you know, minimum wage or even a little bit above. And then that shop credit can be used to purchase things in the shop, obviously.
When I think about alternative economic models, especially in relation to what we're doing, I think about what we're doing. One, I use the term because people understand it most quickly, but the idea of intentional community or religious community is really false. You know, our bishop likes to say you can't create community. What you need to do is open your eyes to the community that exists around you. And I think that's what we try to do here, is not put barriers up to the fact that we are in Athens and we're of this place, and trying to be a part of its history, its geography, and its circle of interchange, both monetary and relationship. And so that's what we're a part of. What we are is a household, and so that's what we try to do, and that's the economy that we try to be. I mean, economics shares the root with ecology, and the Greek word, the Greek origins is household, you know. And so from the early days, that sense of what you do to sustain your house is economics, and we've really lost that sense. I mean, think about the days of home economics in college, you know, college departments in home economics. You don't see that anymore. I think that's the most important language for the church. I think it's way too easy. When we want to talk about economics, we want to fool ourselves. We just want to take stupid pills over and over again and come up with macro solutions, whether that be, capitalism or socialism or communism. Like we want these macro answers to really complex set of relationships. Households is, I think, where we as Christians need to re-root ourselves in. One of the big questions for me is how can we as a church start to engage this question of right livelihood? Now, there's a lot of ways to say that. I mean, probably the language in the Christian lexicon would be discipleship, but the more economic term is right livelihood. How do we live in this world in a way that allows us to live into our faith with integrity? And that's hard. There's no easy solution to that. The language of the 99% versus the 1%, that doesn't get to that level of complexity. It's just, we're all sinners, and how do we live into that, and how do we try to live into a way that makes our relationships with the land, with other people, with money more holy.
Beauty and creativity is a really important part of the mix. It also stands it on its head, because when we think about products in a big box store, you think about, they have to all be the same, and if there's a little difference, then that one must be flawed. The people in fair trade, both at our end and the distributors in the middle, look and say, these variations show the personalities, the cultures. So it's on a larger scale, understanding people in other places, but on a smaller scale, it's saying this is something that when you give it away or when you use it is this individual artistry, craftsmanship, and we value that in a way that's worth the rest of this trouble, because the whole system is very burdensome because it's so small.
Every product sold in this store has a story behind it, has real life people stories, family stories, village stories that get shared over and over again. A person who buys a product here, usually when they take that as a gift to someone, the gift goes with the story itself. This is from this country. This is the kind of person that made this. This is what's going on in their village. This is why this has economic justice issues related there too. So it's layers and layers of ecology, economics, social justice. My favorite most recently is Mr. Elipu and the whole concept of recycling elephant dung into paper that school children in Delaware get excited about. So we're teaching concepts of justice and equality and fairness and economic responsibility and stewardship that go far beyond the simple transaction of a little bit of money from our pocketbook to somebody in another part of the world.
I would love to see someday when stores like Global Village simply aren't necessary. We're a nonprofit organization here at the store. While some of our distributors are for-profit, I'm the president of the board of a nonprofit, so everything I do is volunteer. And I would love to see it so that I walked into any store and the coffee is fair trade coffee, and I know child labor wasn't used. And the chocolate's fair trade chocolate, where, again, women and children aren't being exploited and the environment's not being exploited. As soon as I became aware of that, it's not that I never eat non-fair trade chocolate, but it does not taste as good because I know there's an implication behind it. And if our culture was to reach the point where this was on a large scale, I think that would be a marvelous thing, and it can start in our churches.
I've been on farms and volunteered at farms or worked at farms that are self-sustaining purely through their production. And it's only a few of them, There's a lot of farms that I've heard of where people are gung-ho about it for a year or two and then they just don't make it. It's a very fine line if you're going to do this kind of work between efficiency and production, and you have to move very efficiently for yourself, and you have to find the right markets, and you have to value your crops at the right value. You know, you don't need to undersell or anything. I sort of base my prices off of like what others are selling, you know, and then cut back a little if it's wholesale. If I was really going to like be specific about it, I would tally up like how much it cost for the seed, how many hours it took for us to tend it, you know, how many like people hours that was, and then to harvest, and then you have to add in fuel to go to the market or whatever. I think in the end, I would probably end up charging about the same, because if you charge too much, no one's going to buy it. What would happen is I think I would, if there was more of an emphasis on breaking even or making a profit at the farm, I would be even more nitpicky with my staff about being efficient, I think is what it would be. Right now it's sort of like, oh, they're learning. Like I would hire people who know more about farming and who can move at a quicker rate or don't need to be taught everything, things like that. We would sort of change our operation a little, I think, if we were going to focus more on profit.